I highly underestimated the EDH players, man.
I didn't think they were degenerates like us. Negate this, counterspell this, arcane denial that. We're going nuts.
Well, how long is this game going to take now?
Another
Like,
3 hours.
are you gonna kill me? Like, kill me. Like,
Yeah.
can we just end this game? And they're like, oh, well, I'm not gonna do that.
In CEDH, it seems like cool. Basically the same stuff. Like,
Yeah.
what's the real difference between like a couple more free spells and
I mean,
win
that's
con?
well, so that's really about it when it comes to switching to the CEDH side of things. So I'm sorry that we can't really give you guys like a ton of more information. Like, obviously, we'll go with a couple other blue spells that you may not see, and I will explain why. But a lot of these we're just gonna touch on because apparently you guys are already playing them.
Most of them, yes.
So which is crazy to me. So, yeah, I think we just start going down the list, and then obviously you'll recognize a ton of these, and then one or two we'll say our piece on for sure. The first two on the list: Mystic, Remora, and Rhystic Study. We love cards in our format. These draw cards the best.
Seen the exact same amount of play. If you have one, you have the other.
Yeah, if you're in blue, these are auto includes every time.
Yeah. Any questions, class, in the back? No one?
No, perfect.
Okay.
Next
thanks.
card. So next card
Yes.
is different.
Yes.
So next up is Flusterstorm. Again, a card that we have brought up before.
Mm-hmm.
So Flusterstorm is 1 blue mana, and it says counter target instant or sorcery spell, but it has Storm.
Ooh, what is Storm, and how does that work
So
exactly?
Storm is actually an ability that gets put onto the stack for those people that don't know. So if I cast something and you have a stifle or a trick bind, you can actually stifle the storm trigger and then no copies happen. Essentially what happens is if someone casts 3, 4, 5 spells in a turn, and they do not have to be instants and sorceries, just to be
any
fair,
spell.
just any spell, and then say they put a big game-winning spell on the stack.
Cyclonic Rift.
Cyclonic Rift.
Sure.
They they need everything to go away so that they can win. You then cast a Flusterstorm, and now that copies for every spell they've cast this turn.
Sure.
So if Cyclonic Rift is the 5th one that they've cast, you have 6 copies because you have the original as well of Flusterstorm, and they have to. Sorry, I should have completed my sentence on Flusterstorm because you can pay 1 on the Flusterstorm
For each copy.
to then go away.
A force spike.
But when that storm builds up and all of a sudden it's like, okay, cool, I'm going to Flusterstorm, but now you need to pay for 6 copies for it not to be countered. That is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, I got 4 mana and a counter spell. I can't
Right.
pay for it.
Flusterstorm is probably one of our best counter spells, to be perfectly honest.
Yes.
Because the only thing that stops a Flusterstorm really
Mana?
is another Flusterstorm.
Mana or another Flusterstorm.
Yeah. Unless you have an excess of mana or another Flusterstorm.
Or a Mindbreak Trap.
Or the next swap on the list, Mindbreak Trap.
Mm-hmm.
So Mindbreak Trap is 2 blue and blue.
So
and
expensive.
says, yeah, very expensive.
So expensive.
And then the first line says that you may pay 0 for Mindbreak Trap if an opponent has cast 3 or more spells this turn. And it says exile any number of target spells
On the stack.
So specifically that means that it's on the stack.
Yep.
So why do we run Mindbreak Trap?
Well, because people will play multiple spells, and then cool, we have this stack. Just like with you guys, we really didn't expect you guys to play as many counter spells as you did. Cool, this person counter spells, 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 and we exile everything.
Mindbreak Trap.
Cool,
And
everything's
all of it's gone.
and it's like cool. That was easy enough. Cool. Flusterstorm and Mindbreak Trap are just insanely good. Cool. Flusterstorm once again only hits instant and sorceries, whereas Mindbreak Trap hits everything on the stack.
Exactly. And the thing is specifically with Mindbreak Trap, it doesn't have to hit everything on the stack.
Hit all their stuff.
Right? You go, okay, you know what? Actually, it would be a lot better for me if my offer you refuse, or like your offer you can't refuse, hit my counterspell. So I'm going to leave those 2 alone so I get 2 treasures.
Sure.
Everything else on the stack's going to be exiled, though. So you're like, cool, I didn't care about that one counterspell that I threw out. I don't care. It's gone now, and everything on the stack is diminished. I get 2 treasures now. So you can target what's on the stack as well. And on top of that, they get exiled. And it can hit any spell.
Underworld
creature,
gone.
enchantment. Yeah, Underworld Breach, exiled, gone. Thassa's Oracle, exiled, gone.
Can't bring it back.
But obviously there is that caveat of they have to cast 3 spells in a turn. And it's not for everyone. It's one person has to cast 3 spells specifically.
So this person casts 3 spells, and this person casts 1 spell, and you
want to Mind Brag Trap them.
You can.
Yeah.
As long as someone did it. Same with like Flusterstorm. So the storm count goes not just for the opponent. You don't accumulate your own Flusterstorm. The table accumulates so he casts 2 spells. He casts 1 spell. He casts 1 spell, and you cast your 1 spell. Now, cool. What's the storm count? 3, 2.
So
2.
you cast 3 spells. He casts 3 spells. I cast this Flusterstorm. Okay, cool. Count as 7.
Yes.
Right. That's the way that works.
Yes.
So these are just really hard to deal with. And again, when people aren't expecting something like a Mind Break Trap, and you on turn, 1 are going for it, and someone Mind Break Traps you because you had to cast like 4 spells in order to try to attempt to win. That's why Mind Break Trap is so good. You don't need to do anything.
It is pretty good. Just like with like Jessica's Will, when people are like, "Hey, how many cards do you have in your hand?" When someone says, "How many spells
have you cast so far?"
This is the second one.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's kind of funny because a lot of times
you don't have to have it in hand.
No, let's say how many. That's your second spell.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, you shouldn't go for right now.
And you just have nothing in hand. People do that. People absolutely done it.
I've got.
And people will sit there and be like, "Okay, so your next one's 3." And all of a sudden your mind goes, "Oh no. You know what? I'm just going to pass there." And they never had it. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but you don't know, but is something you have to keep in mind because of Mind Break Trap's existence.
And that's what I love about Blue. Blue, you get to play so many mind games with people.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have it? Do they not have it? Do you hold up your 2 mana for your counterspell and say, "You really shouldn't do that," and I'm not going to explain why. If you can't figure it out.
Yeah. When you're playing in Blue, you can do a lot of sneaky stuff. Like, for instance, me and Chris have both done this, where, in fact, there was one game I very specifically remember you were playing Blue, and you passed me a land in your hand for me to look at. Because we were asking if there was interaction, and you passed me a land, and I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And I passed it back to you, and everyone was like, "Oh no!" And then they didn't go for it because we tricked him into thinking that he had a counterspell, and he didn't.
I remember this. It wasn't that long ago. It was great.
And it was so awesome. I was like, "Oh, sweet, it worked!" Like, you could do that kind of stuff.
Otherwise, we were screwed.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So,
but like, those are the things that you can play with Blue. But yeah, Flusterstorm and Mind Break Trap are amazing
so
cards
good.
in our format.
So good.
So this next one, is going to be a little bit weird for people to understand, maybe. But it is Mental Misstep. So Mental Misstep is a Phyrexian blue, and you counter a target spell that is mana value 1.
Okay.
That's it.
Not 1 or less, just 1.
Just 1.
Okay. Soul Ring. Gotcha.
So the thing with Mental Misstep is there's a lot of 1-drops in our format. We try to keep things very low to the ground.
Yes.
One of the ones that we've already talked about is Mystic Remora.
Sure.
People on turn 1 land Mystic Remora. Cool, I want to draw a bunch of cards. Because it's a Phyrexian blue, you pay 2 life, counter the Mystic Remora.
Oh, that's what Phyrexian blue is.
Oh, yeah, right? Yes, you could pay a blue or 2 life to cast a Phyrexian blue. So, because of the fact that there are so many 1-mana spells in our format, Mystic Remora, Esper Sentinel,
Soul Ring,
Gamble, Enlightened Tutor, Worldly Tutor, Mystical Tutor, Swan Song.
An offer you can't refuse.
An offer you can't refuse.
Sure.
Like, there are so many. Veil of Summer we talked about, and there's so many 1-mana spells going around that sometimes people just aren't expecting you to have, like, because you're tapped out, you have no mana left, and they're like, "Oh, sweet, now I'm going to cast this Veil of Summer, and all my spells can't be countered anymore." And you're like, "Cool, pay 2 life and Mental Misstep."
You're done.
And then all of a sudden they can't do anything anymore because their last thing got countered.
It's a good feeling. Especially early.
It is very niche. So seeing that it sees only 6% of play in EDH, it's at 84% of our use. It's being, again, just that sneaky piece that, like, people you may have, you may not. Who knows?
And how do you play around it?
And you just have to go for it. I go for my Esper Sentinel or my Mystic Remora, and someone just happens to have it, and then what do? You just call it a day and move on.
Land go.
Because you got screwed. So it absolutely happens. So next on the list, Fierce Guardianship. Talked about Fierce Guardianship. We love Fierce Guardianship too.
Good card.
Free counterspells.
Play it.
Who knows? Who knew that we like free counterspells? This one, however, Chris, do you want to take this one?
I'll take this one. It's seen 76% of play in CEDH. It is Pact of Negation. This one is kind of cool. So Pact of Negation is 0 mana. Does not get hit by Mental Misstep, but you pay 0 mana, and it counters any spell. The problem with it is, hey, on your upkeep, you need to pay 2, no, you pay 3 and 2 blue. So it's 5 mana on your upkeep. If you don't have it, I've had some different opportunities that I've missed entirely. I'm like, cool, I should have bounced his mana dork because then it goes to his turn and he only has 4 mana. I'm like, what am I doing? This is an auto include in any blue. It feels bad. Sometimes the difference between EDH and CEDH realistically is I'm not always playing for a win. I'm playing for a not lose. Hey, we got 5 minutes on the round. I can't let this person win right now. It's not nefarious. It's just I can get 1 point opposed to him getting 5 and me getting 0. So sometimes we play to the draw. Hey, early on, he's going for an early turn win. I got to use it because if I don't, I just lose the game. What use are cards in your hand if you can't use them? Pact is definitely needed. It feels bad because otherwise you're essentially paying for a force of will.
Yeah, paying full price for a force of will, essentially.
On your upkeep.
Yeah. So before you can do anything for your turn, you have to pay for it, like immediately. Otherwise, you lose the game.
Yeah.
So Pact of Negation is one of those pieces that is typically used at the beginning of Counterspell Wars because usually if you're throwing out a Pact of Negation and it's early in the game, you're attempting a win.
Yes.
Typically.
Yes.
Because that's the main point. Because then if it never gets back to your upkeep because you're winning, who cares? It's a free counterspell. You didn't pay any mana for it.
Or it never gets back to your turn anyway because the next person goes for it on their next turn. Cool. I didn't need to pay the 5 mana
All
anyway.
right, well, I guess I didn't need to pay it regardless.
Cool.
And so that's why Pact of Negation is just for us another free counterspell that we typically will, like I said, typically we'll throw that out first because then if it gets countered, you don't have to pay the 5 mana.
Yeah.
So it's just another free counterspell for us, so we love it.
Absolutely. We went over Force of Will. Yep. We went over Swan Song. Chain of Vapor is kind of interesting. This one is intriguing.
Yeah.
So Chain of Vapor is 1 mana. You can bounce any
non-land permanent.
So you can't bet. But the interesting thing is, if you bounce something of your opponent's, they can sacrifice a land and copy the effect. The other advantage to it is that for some Rog side pilots out there is you can cast a Chain of Vapor on your 0-drop, sacrifice a land that's already been tapped to bounce something else, another, 0 mana rock to then
bounce your mana vault.
Sure, and keep doing that to bounce all of your artifacts and then replay them, and now you have a bunch of mana and you go for the win. So for like turbo decks, it feels good. I know that there's a new card. Into the Floodmaw is similar, and I see people playing that kind of currently over Chain of Vapor because you can bounce any permanent, just one. They can't reciprocate on that. So you can return a creature. If you choose to return, say, not a creature, a Grafdigger's Cage, for example, cool, you need to give them a fish. So the gift abilities is a new one where you have to decide before they say it resolves, do you give them a fish or you not give them a fish? So cool, I want to return a creature. Cool, don't give them a fish. Sometimes that's a little bit more relevant than this one. It's like, it's pretty straightforward. Like, hey, if it's a creature, cool, you don't give them a fish. If it's not a creature and it has to get returned, give them a fish. It's a 1/1 fish, which the tokens are adorable.
Yes, I love the tokens for the Into the Floodmaw. They're really nice.
Yes.
Specifically though, Into the Floodmaw does say an opponent, so you can't bounce your own things with Into the Floodmaw, but a 1 mana bounce at instant speed that gives them a 1/1 creature that sure they might be able to Culling the Wicked or sack it to a Phyrexian Tower,
Gaia's Cradle,
something like that. Like there's a chance, but usually you're bouncing this something at instant speed before your turn, typically to win.
Sure.
So usually that doesn't come up. It can, but it's pretty. Usually you give it to like the person that is like not in black typically.
Sure. I like using these kind of effects whenever, say they go for a breach line. You can bounce the breach while they're casting the LED.
Yeah.
Cool. You gonna sack your LED with no mana?
Go ahead, sack your LED and put your Underworld Breach back into your graveyard.
Nah, that's not
Or
gonna work.
put the Underworld Breach into the yard with the
Yeah,
Lion's
so
Eye Diamond
definitely
effect.
these kind of like simple bounce effects. I know there's a couple different other ones that are similar to this one.
That's Alchemist's Retrieval, I think
Yes.
is the one I'm thinking of.
Yes, so semi-similar.
So there's a lot of these bounce effects, and they all have their place. And depending on if you're lower color, you might run more of them. But sometimes just bouncing a thing back to a hand for a turn so you can do your thing is enough to win.
Well, yeah, especially looking at like EDH in general, we had like 2 removal spells realistically. We had the Pongify and the Rapid Hybridization.
Yeah.
These are our removal spells. And if
Mhm.
they can remove a creature for a turn and remove a non-land permanent, it's essentially a 1-mana Beast Within. With they get a 1/1 fish. So realistically, not too bad.
Yeah,
Not too
definitely
bad
not.
effect. Okay, I'm so glad we went over it. Because I definitely think that Into the Flood Maw is going to see more play.
Absolutely.
It's still a new card. Outside of like Rogside or like Turbo decks, like Chain of Vapor is just kind of going down in general in my mind. Outside of like, cool, I'm going to make a bunch of mana. It's like,
For sure.
Yeah.
Next up, the big one.
The one that
The one that people argue about and fight on, and whether they should be banned or
should
whatever.
not be banned.
Thassa's Oracle. Thassa's Oracle 2. So it's blue.
Yes.
So when Thassa's Oracle enters the battlefield, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is your devotion to blue. Put up to 1 of them on top of your library and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So it's kind of like a scry, but it is kind of specific.
Sure.
But the part we care about, if X, which is the devotion, is greater than or equal to the number of cards in your library, you win the game.
Insane. Devotion is essentially how many blue pips or pips of that color that you have on. It's a very old Theros effect, which is kind of where what set is this? This is Theros Reborn or something like that?
I think so.
Okay.
But basically, if you were to have, for instance, a Thassa's Oracle and a Rhystic Study, and that was all that was on your board, your devotion is 3.
3.
Right? Because you have 3 blue pips. Obviously, Thassa's Oracle is our best win con.
Most compact. Absolutely.
Emptying libraries is so incredibly simple.
If you're running black, yes.
Well, if you're running black, it's very simple.
Sure.
Even if you're running red and you're running grinding station style loops, emptying your graveyard is easy.
Green.
But then you can't quite do, you can't like take away someone else's Thassa's Oracle. But emptying your library is pretty simple.
Is white the only color that can't do that effect?
Probably, if I was to think about it, maybe it can.
If you guys know about a card that can remove your entire library in white, not colorless, in white, let us know down in the comments. I think white might be the only one that I can think of off the top of my head that
can't do that to some
that can't
regard.
just mill their entire library.
But essentially what happens, so the most compact win con in our format is this card, Thassa's Oracle, and Demonic Consultation. So Demonic Consultation, obviously we'll discuss it in black as well, but essentially what it does is it exiles your entire library because you name a card that doesn't exist in your library.
You're already dead.
Yeah. You exile your entire library, and then because your devotion to blue is higher than the cards in your library, you win the game. So I've had people bring up Thassa's Oracle and say, oh, well, I can just kill it. It doesn't matter. And this is the reason why. If you have 0 cards in your library and you have 0 devotion, 0 is equal to 0, and you still win.
I don't remember that in math, but you might be right.
That's the point, right? It's the fact that even if your devotion is nothing, you don't have any cards in your library, so they are equal, and so therefore you still win the game, even if it dies.
Sure.
Which is why it's such a hard, because people would think that, oh, it's just a 2-card win con, just counter one of them. But the problem is it comes down to what do you counter in this combo, okay? Because if you counter Thassa's Oracle, they simply hold on to the Demonic Consultation in their hand, or their Tainted Pact, which is the other piece that people can use.
I still got my library.
You're like, all right, well, I'll just find a way to reanimate it later, and I'll try again.
Yeah.
Or do you counter the Demonic Consultation, and then they have a way to either bounce the Thassa's Oracle back to their hand and try it again later, or they Underworld Breach and simply, cast the Tainted Pact again after, either flickering it or something.
Sure.
There's just so many ways to just abuse it, and it's just so compact, and at 3 mana to win the game is a brutal and very simple way to win the game.
Especially in the most played colors of EDH.
Yeah. Yep.
Blue and black are the number 1, and same with CEDH. They are the most played. I would love to look at a study in general and see, have they always been this way, or has it been because they have really resilient, definite win cons that say I win the game outside of damage?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would like to
Well,
look into that a little
there's
bit
another
more.
card that's semi-similar to this, which is Laboratory Maniac, which
Yes,
says that you need to draw on an empty
on an empty
library.
library. Yep.
So that was the old one before Thassa's Oracle was printed, and there was some kind of, cool.
There was also a Jace that did something similar.
There is a Jace that does
Yeah.
which is interesting. I've seen it in Italian.
Yeah.
Which is fine because there's not too many win cons. Cool. Now I have 2 win cons with 2 ways to exile my entire grave or library. So Labman seemed a little bit more fair in general, just because cool. I'm gonna, on an empty library, I'm gonna attempt to draw. Normally that would kill you, but this one Labman says cool, win the game instead. So what they could do is say cool, I'm gonna kill your Laboratory Maniac.
And then you lose.
And then you lose the game. So Thassa's Oracle, how this happens in general is cool. You play Thassa's Oracle, you say, hey, does it resolve? Cool?
Good.
Turn.
Perfect.
Cool. It resolves. ETB, which is enter the battlefield, trigger on the stack, which says, cool, I win the game if I have an empty library, or my devotion's equal to this.
Yes.
So, cool. ETB on the stack, hold priority. I'm going to cast a spell. I'm going to name Emrakul the Aeon's Torn banned card. You can name Dockside now. Go for it.
Yeah. There you go.
Right? Mana Crypt, J-Lo. Let's go. So, cool. Exile my entire library.
Like Thassa's Oracle trigger back on the stack.
There's very little that you can do.
Yeah, there's very little. You still can do things, for sure.
You can stifle.
Yes.
A new card that was printed not too long ago that's similar to other cards is Everybody Lives.
Yes.
That's a good one. I like that one. 1 in a white, cool. No one loses.
No one can win.
No one can win.
Or
Cool.
your opponents can't win.
Your opponents, well, so basically it stops you from winning. You have Angel's Grace.
Yep.
Cool. Well, I don't lose. That means he doesn't win. That means the other people are still in the game. We're good to go. Send it. Cool. Means nothing. A slight couple of those, like,
you can attempt to, we talked about it in green, you can attempt to endurance what graveyard they have back on top of their library. If they don't have a response to that, then all of a sudden they have like maybe 6 or 7 cards in their library and their devotion's 3, and now they don't get anything, right?
Sure.
Now they don't win the game because it's not equal.
Or you could have them draw a card.
Or you can force the draw, which is what I brought up with Esper Sentinel.
Sure.
Because that's come up before, where someone goes for a win like this and you cast into an Esper Sentinel, you force a card draw, and they can't win because they die before the trigger ever goes off. So there are ways to stop a Thassa's Oracle win. There are ways to kill them or make it so they don't just win right then and there. It's just difficult.
Thassa's Oracle is the boogeyman. I think it definitely sees a part to play in CEDH.
Yes.
You don't want the 3-hour necessarily games. Hey, I get it. EDH players, you guys want to have a long time. You already ordered pizza. It's on the way. You don't care when it gets here because you're going to be here for a couple hours. CEDH players, once again, we have a 70 to 80 minute time frame. We're trying to jam games in a night. We're trying to get 3-4 games if we can to practice our first 5 turns to see, okay, cool, is this deck viable? Especially with the new bans, we're trying to get through some games. So honestly, Thassa's Oracle is needed in CDH just to move the game along and make sure that there's actual threats out there and says, cool, you don't respect me, the game will end. Thassa's Oracle is great. Force of Negation. I love Force of Negation. This one has seen a lot of play throughout. Force of Negation is similar to Force of Will. The only real difference is that it's 1 blue. It hits an instant.
Any non-creature.
Non-creature. So Force of Will hits creatures as well. So Force of Negation hits non-creatures. The thing is, you can pitch a card similar to Force of Will. You don't have to pay a life, but you can only do it on an opponent's turn.
Yes.
So it's a little bit worse. The other thing is that it exiles. So cool. That I'm gonna cast a
food chain.
A food chain. Cool. That thing's gone. You cannot regain that later
it's gone.
on.
It's literally gone.
So Force of Negation is really good. Doing it on someone else's turn sometimes feels really bad. So, like, with Pact of Negation, like we were talking before, you can really play that on your own turn to try and win. Force of Negation, it's a way to not lose.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not going to be playing 1 blue. I mean, that's a cancel.
Yeah, it's not great on its own. And so a lot of, for the most part, a lot of speed, a lot of turbo decks, they don't really care much for Force of Negation, because they don't want to be in the game very long. They don't want to ever even see what spells that you're going to cast, essentially. So with Force of Negation, some faster decks just don't like to see it because of that restriction
Yeah,
that
it's
you can only do in
understandable.
an opponent's turn.
Yeah.
But for the decks that want to go slower, for the decks that want to initiate a game plan at a different pace, Force of Negation is fantastic,
Control decks.
especially when it comes to the fact that it exiles the card. Because there are so many ways. I mean, we've talked about a couple, right? Like Underworld Breach and some of these other ways to recur these spells back, that if we can just simply exile it and it's gone forever, sure, they might still find ways to win, but it's a lot less that we have to worry about.
That's really nice. That kind of goes to a little bit of a segue for our next card, Brain Freeze. Brain Freeze is semi-similar in the way that Flusterstorm works. It works off a storm. Okay, so it's 1 in a blue, and it says target player mills 3 cards. This is with Storm, so just like with cool, people have cast 8 spells. Mine's the 9th. Cool. 9 times 3. Okay, cool. 27.
Yep.
I can split those up. Cool. You can mill 3, and you can mill 3, and you can mill 3. No. I'm going to mill all 27. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to cast Underworld Breach. So with the Force of Negation, there will be multiple triggers, right? So they all go on the stack. Cool. You can still exile the original one on the stack. Cool. I'm going to put all those on priority. Cool. You can't replay that. So hopefully you get exactly what you want. And sometimes if you don't have like Grinding Station or other effects like that, or the Wheel like we were talking in red, where we can now, cool, we're going to draw 7, discard our entire hand. Outside of those effects, it's like, cool, how do I keep chugging through my deck at that point in time? Brain Freeze is part of the combo. It's LED, Brain Freeze, Underworld Breach. That's kind of it. You could add the Thassa's Oracle into it. Cool.
Yeah.
Mill myself, play Thassa's Oracle, win, and I still have a graveyard that I can interact, and someone tries to deal with me. Cool.
Right.
Counter however. Or if you don't have the Thassa's Oracle, you went for it early, you don't have it anymore. Cool. Mill you. Either do a windfall effect at that point in time and end the game, or you don't have that. Cool. Pass turn. You draw your card on your draw step, you lose the game. Rinse. Cool. My game. Sometimes that can be bad for sure.
It can be a little rough because, like we talked about in green, and like I've said earlier in this podcast episode, like people still have endurances, right, to like try to shuffle their graveyards back in.
Sure.
Like there are still ways for you to put cards back on the top of your library. Noxious Revival is another one that we actually didn't bring up in green, or maybe we did.
It didn't see too much play if it did. I like it more and more these days for sure. Yeah. Against a Thassa's Oracle, someone can say, cool, put 1 card on.
Put 1 card on top of your library, and now I don't die. Can be difficult, though, because maybe sometimes you don't have the win con in your hand, and it screws you regardless.
Sure.
So you end up just losing anyway. You're just stemming the bleeding.
Well, you can kill their Thassa's Oracle and then put the 1 on top, and then they don't
win
the game.
That's fair. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So there are downsides. Like Thassa's Oracle is the main end of that Underworld Breach loop.
It's the boogeyman.
Because I guess we could go into a full explanation on this real quick, just so that way people understand it.
Sure.
So
from the top,
yes.
Let's animate it. This is what I'm here for.
Yeah. Okay. So here's what we'll do.
Yes.
So let's say you have Brain Freeze, Lion's Eye, and Underworld Breach in hand. You're going to cast Underworld Breach.
Perfect.
Underworld Breach we talked about in red, but essentially you exile 3 cards from your graveyard, and you can recast non-land cards from your graveyard. You cast Lion's Eye Diamond. Lion's Eye Diamond, you can sack it for 3 mana of any color, but you discard your hand.
Okay. Don't need anyways.
So you cast Lion's Eye Diamond.
Perfect.
You then cast the Brain Freeze. The Storm triggers, which is 3 currently. So that's 9 cards that you put into your library. Underworld Breach says you have to exile 3 cards from your library in order to cast things. So 9 cards go into your graveyard. You sack the LED to the effect, get 3 blue. You then exile 3 cards from your graveyard with Underworld Breach, recast the Lion's Eye Diamond, because that cost you nothing and you still have that 3 blue sitting in your pool. You exile those 3 other cards of the 9 you just milled and recast the Brain Freeze targeting yourself, and now your Storm's at 5.
Cool. 15.
So everything goes back into your graveyard again. So you repeat that loop. You end up extra blue every time you do it,
sure,
because Brain Freeze is only 2. And at the very end of the loop, you make sure you just don't exile your Thassa's Oracle and like don't exile your Pact of Negation. But then once you've milled your entire library and Thassa's Oracle's in there, you exile 3 cards through Underworld Breach, use the excess blue mana that you have, Thassa's enters, trigger on the stack, you win. That takes some time to learn to get down. because I have seen people go for Underworld Breach lines with not enough in their graveyard to Underworld Breach loop.
Yep.
But all of this is a process. All of this learning, what we're doing here now for you, right? This is all a process of learning it and understanding it. So that's why
and
it
when
felt
to interact.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because with an Underworld Breach, the moment you see it, you want to counter the Underworld Breach,
Yep.
right? But say, for instance, we just talked about Force of Negation, and they're like, I'm going to cast Brain Freeze. And you're like, awesome. I'm going to Force of Negation the original Brain Freeze. Yes, the copies will resolve. I
Yes.
can't do anything about the copies. But then the original is exiled. A card we haven't talked about because it's in black. But you'd have to like hit a Praetor's Grasp.
Sure.
And then hope that someone at the table is also on Thassa's Oracle Winds, which is probably pretty high up. That's just kind of that line, just again, because we just want to make sure that people understand exactly how it goes through the loop and when's the best time to start it. If you can just counter the Underworld Breach, that's your best bet.
Brain Freeze could be used aggressively as well.
Yeah.
Mystical Tutor is our next card for CEDH, played at about 54%. So once again, it being put in the bin isn't the worst thing ever. Okay, someone goes and tutors, cool. I'm gonna Brain Freeze you. Cool.
Mill 3?
Mill 6.
Well, yeah, if you did it before their upkeep.
Cool. Mill them, mill someone else. Cool. Not necessarily the best winning line, but realistically, if someone's going for the win, it's not a horrible thing. Cool. Cool. Your Thassa's in your graveyard now. Good luck. Hopefully you can get it back out. So, Brain Freeze definitely works with Mystical Tutor. Once again, we talked about Mystical Tutor in general. I normally, in Blue Farm, will go and get a counter spell and say, hey, I'm trying to go as long as humanly possible, and I'm not going for the win. So even though it is shown, I'm like, hey, I'm being responsible.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not getting a Pact of Negation. Definitely not.
Nah.
Because that's going to scream something's going on.
Yep.
So what you decide to pick for this and what you reveal, same with Worldly Tutor, these different tutors that you have to reveal, you might want to get something that's not going to send up the alarm bells and say, hey, he's going to win the game. But that's Mystical Tutor and Brain Freeze. Phyrexian Metamorph. This one is great.
Yes.
It's the most seen clone, but basically what it is, it's 3 and a Phyrexian Blue. We've already talked about Phyrexian Blue. We can explain it again. You pay 2 life or you pay another blue. So it's 3 and 2 life or 4 total. It's always going to be 3 for me personally.
Typically, we're paying the life, yeah.
So Phyrexian Metamorph comes down and it makes a copy of an artifact or a creature.
Mm-hmm.
So it can make a copy of the One Ring. The One Ring says if you've cast this turn, then you get protection from everything. Technically, you cast Phyrexian Metamorph. Therefore, when it becomes a copy of the One Ring, you get protection from everything.
Yes.
It hits most of everything good. Would you want to really hit this with a Soul Ring? Maybe not. Would you want to hit this with maybe you could get a Birthing Pod with this even.
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily likely, but it's very modal.
Exactly. That's the word I was going to use.
It's modal.
The fact that it has options. It can copy your own stuff if you maybe just need a little bit more of an effect that you already have.
Mm-hmm.
It can copy an opponent's big a Detraxa or Tivit or something that
it doesn't turn on Dockside anymore because
exactly.
it's still an artifact.
It's still, artifact in addition to its other types.
So even if it's a creature, it's still an artifact. So it turns on your Mox Opal.
Mm-hmm.
It turns on those different effects. But now it doesn't feed Dockside. I think this thing will definitely see continued play even after the Dockside bans. It's 3 mana. Yes, it feels a little bad, but it hits
a lot
of things outside of enchantments and lands. It hits most of the important things.
It's just one of those pieces that it never quite feels dead because you just get the best thing at the time.
Yep.
And sometimes, again, like I've said multiple times, sometimes that's all you need.
Sure.
Right? If it's the One Ring, awesome. Like
Ooh.
So next up on the list,
this one stops Thassa's Oracle quite often.
I was gonna say, yeah. So not quite in the way that you would expect. This is Born Upon a Wind.
Yes.
So Born Upon a Wind was an interesting card from the Lord of the Rings set.
It took some time to get traction.
That initially, I'm not gonna lie, the first time I saw Born Upon a Wind, I thought it was nuts, and I've always kept that in my head. So Born Upon a Wind is 1 and a blue. That is an instant that says cards you control this turn have flash or something like that, and draw a card on it. So for us, what this card says is attempt to win the game at instant speed.
Yes.
So if someone puts a Thassa's Oracle on the stack, and you have enough, rocks or maybe sacrifice effects or some sorcery speed stuff
5 mana?
that you couldn't quite, you know, or you were simply holding it waiting for someone to go for something like
Yeah.
this, you then can Born Upon a Wind, or like say for instance, okay, let's do it this way. Let's say you have Thassa's Oracle in hand with their Thassa's Oracle on the stack.
Ooh.
You Mystical Tutor, put Demonic Consultation on top. You Born Upon a Wind. Now all your spells have flash. You draw the Demonic Consultation. You cast your Thassa's Oracle. You cast your Demonic Consultation. Yours is on the stack above theirs. You win first.
And everyone's already used their counter spells or said, I don't have anything to stop this.
So you're like, cool, I didn't either. Technically.
Sometimes the best counter spells are just winning
the game first.
Oh, man. I love different ways to win the game in instant speed. I think it's so important right now. I know that, Sisse has been really good at it. I know that Tyam has been really good at it. I know that Magda has been really good at just winning on top of everyone else. I really enjoy those decks considerably. The other use for this is your Necropotence, your Necrodominance kind of effects. So what you're going to do is cool. You're going to play your Necrodominance and Potence. Essentially, you pay life, and your end step, you get to put all those to your hand. At that point in time, I can't cast these. I got to get rid of it. Either I'm going to a hand of 7 or 5. No, I'm going to Born Upon the Wind, play all my zeros, make as much mana as I can, and then we're going to play a card from red. Final Fortune, as we knew from last week. Cool. Take an extra turn. Cool. Discard to either 7 or 5 or 4 or whatever we're at, right? Cool. Sculptor Perfect, whatever. Go to untap.
You're going to sculpt your perfect 7, which is Thassa's Oracle, Demonic Consultation, Counterspell, 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 Counterspell.
Land.
Yeah, just to throw them a loop.
Sure. Why not? Win the game at that point in time. Maybe even a silence, depending on what colors you're in.
Yeah, if you're in white.
So Born Upon the Wind gives you some different options. I know there was a couple other different spells that were printed recently, such as Valley Floodcaller, very similar. We have some people playing Emergent Zone, which is super good. We also have the Enchantment of Anticipation. Cool. So we have all these different effects, and this is the first one that we can then go Mystical Tutor for when we need it.
Which is fantastic, because you're already in the colors. So sometimes if you need it and that's all you need, the game can be over, right?
Sure.
If, like, say, you had a One Ring on the field and you Mystical Tutor for it, and then you just tap the One Ring, draw the card, and, you're good to go. So, yeah, winning at instant speed is something that I think EDH players will really have to adjust to, because this is, I do not think this is a thing in EDH, is winning over the top of someone else or winning on someone else's turn, because that just feels very odd.
I don't see anything currently that we've reviewed that would say this is heavily played in EDH of like, cool, this is the win con. Our opinion really realistically has been that people are not winning at instant speed. They're winning with damage. Realistically, it's going to be an overrun. It's going to be give all your stuff flying. It's going to be Cyclonic Rift everything and then kill one person and then tell him to go home, but he can't because he drove with the other person. Those kind of effects, those feel bad effects in general. And I would love to hear your guys' wacky, wild win cons in EDH and how you guys have won at different ways. There was actually... I got to tell this story because Corey, you need to listen to this, and you need to know that everyone on the internet knows the story now. So I was actually playing with one of my bosses back in the day, one of my good friends now. I was playing a precon against him. I think it was a 5-banner commander game. Okay. It was very EDH. Mine was just a precon. It was the Lord of the Rings Grixis deck. With
Sauron?
With Sauron.
Okay.
I played that at the tournament or at the game asylum, and I was wrecking face. I was 1v3, and so I'm like, cool. I love this precon. Keep it the way it is. So I brought it to my friend's place or whatever. It was 1v5, and eventually it was just me and my friend, right? Me and Corey, we're just chilling. And the funny thing is that he played a dinosaur deck and just went absolutely nuts. This deck had so many board wipes and board wipes and board wipes and board wipes. I did that forever, but there was a card in there that would basically mill him out, and I'd be able to cast that top card, and everything else would get milled until every time it attacked, it was like a 0/3 with like that was like unblockable or something like that. I forget what it was, but essentially what I did is I board wiped him. I took his 4/6 indestructible flying double strike whatever with hostage taker, and then I proceeded to board wipe him, and I had his indestructible guy, and I was able to eventually just keep swinging him with this like 0/3 skulker dude that eventually milled him out. It was like a 5-hour game. It was like a 5-hour game, and you know who you are. You know who you are, and you know who won that game. I stole that game. I stole that game. And
Oh,
sometimes
man.
those kind of things kind of come up in your like casual, and that's kind of
Yes.
why I enjoy the casual to an extent sometimes. I don't want to be there for 5 hours, but sometimes winning in unpredictable ways are
It's
really
hilarious.
is really what we want to hear. How have you guys won outside of combat damage that was unpredictable and you're like, "Oh,
Well, this just happened.
I don't know how I did that, but I did." We love to hear about those different times and just honestly laugh with you guys about
Yeah.
those times. So be sure to let us know how you guys have won, and
Maybe we make a video on that at some point, and we go over some stories. I think that'd be fun.
I think that would be great. You know what? Yes. So this is what we would like you guys to do, honestly. We would like you guys to write in, okay? Some of our friends from our Discord, please write us in about some unconventional ways that you guys have won in EDH, in CDH, and share us with a story. We had a very interesting one even last night that we might even go over in our story of unconventional ways that people win the game.
Yeah.
Be sure to write a comment. Hit us up however you can. I'll be sure to leave a Twitter or some other way to get a hold of us.
Yes.
Send us a message. Let us know how you guys have won in unpredictable ways. Because we might, honestly, we are going to do an episode eventually here soon enough when we get enough things of reading over some of these unconventional ways that you guys have won and just having a blast with you. So be sure to write. Be sure to write.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
I think that'd be fun, and that would be a gas. We wouldn't read
Yeah.
we would just read them verbatim, not even just cool. Hey, Maddie, can you collect these and put those in, and we're just going to read them, please?
Oh yeah, no, it'd be an absolute
Oh,
blast.
that would be a worthwhile episode. How the fuck did you win?
How does this work? No, so yeah, that would be so much fun, and
Yeah.
obviously, like, we want to interact with you guys. So, all right, I think now we're gonna just kind of go into honorable mentions here.
Yeah.
There are definitely cards that see quite a bit of play that we have talked about maybe in other episodes, such as like Time Twister and things like that. But obviously, we want to just go over the mainstays that you'll like most likely 100% see.
Yes.
So most likely 100% does not make a lot of sense, but
Most
it's fine.
likely
It makes sense
100%.
to me.
Most likely 100% is the same thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Anyway, so we're just going to do an honorable mention, and my honorable mention is going to be Intuition.
Nice.
So Intuition is 2 and a blue for an instant that says you search your library for 3 different cards of different names. You reveal them to a target opponent, and they give you 1 that goes to your hand, and the other 2 go to your graveyard. So the reason I bring up Intuition is for a couple different reasons. So number 1, for some decks, Intuition is they have 3 copies of a win con, essentially,
Yes.
and they go grab all 3 copies of their win con. Right? They have like essentially a 1-card win condition. They go grab all 3 of them and they present to an opponent and say, okay, here's my 3 cards that are going to win the game. Which one would you like to give me? Sure, of the 3 cards that you just presented to me, I'll give you that one that wins the game.
The sorcery speed.
Right, sure, whatever, who cares? I think the other reason that Intuition sees a lot of play is sometimes they don't care what you put into the graveyard. For instance, I play Tameshi, again, a deck I bring up a lot.
Good one.
So I will cast Intuition, and I will grab just 3 really good enchantments or 3 really good artifacts and say, okay, which one do you want to give me to my hand? Okay, cool. I'll cast that one for turn, and then I'm going to activate Tameshi and bring back the other 2.
Sure.
So I can kind of abuse Intuition in that way.
It seems really good with, like, if you're working with a partner, like, hey, I need this counter spell. I'm going to get these other 2 things that I want in the bin anyways. You need to give me this so I can stop this person from winning.
Right.
But these other 2 things, I don't care if they're bin. Hey, I have too many lands. Cool. Land plus counterspell. Cool. Don't give me the counterspell. Then you lose the game.
Right. And that's the other thing, right? You can use Intuition in a way that like really just sets you up completely. So for instance, the main way you're going to see Intuition is it's going to go and get Underworld Breach. We've talked about it.
Sure.
Lion's Eye Diamond, and it's going to get Savine's Reclamation. So the reason that you get those 3 is, again, no matter what they give you, chances are you're getting the other ones back because you can Savine's them, the Underworld Breach back, or the Lion's Eye Diamond, or both. So then you can use Intuition to go and get the other pieces, mainly Brain Freeze, and then other, like maybe a Pact of Negation or something to go put in your yard. Right?
Perfect. Yeah.
Whatever. So what can happen, though, is, let's say, for instance, I already have Underworld Breach in hand.
You go get the other 3.
So I go, oh, no, we're going to lose to this guy. Oh, man, what a shame. Okay, well, I'm going to cast this Intuition. I'm going to work with you. You don't want to lose, right?
No.
Awesome. So I'm going to go search for Savine's Recollection, Lion's Eye Diamond, and Fierce Guardianship. You don't want to lose, right?
He's got the win.
You don't want to lose, right? I mean, you got to give me this Fierce.
That's all you can do.
And you're like, well, I mean, yeah, I don't want to lose, but you just win on your turn. And you're like, that is a high possibility, yes, but do you want to lose now?
Exactly. You don't lose now.
So there's a chance you can stop me. Maybe you draw something. I don't know, but
Sure.
you don't want to lose now. So do you want to give me this Fierce, or do you want to give me one of these and lose?
That one feels bad.
It does.
That one feels really bad. That feels like in a tournament setting, you say, draw.
That's typically where you actually would do something like
That's
that.
where you kind of force a draw. You can force a draw with intuition. Cool. If you give me this, then he loses the game and I win the game. I mean, that's kind of an interesting situation. We've had a couple of those kind of situations in general at the shop where, like, cool. A couple with Adam, actually, where I'm just like, what are we doing? It was one after another. I'm like, can someone draw already? And essentially what happens is king making is an effect that says, I decide that person wins and the other person doesn't. So in this kind of scenario, the person that's chosen for the intuition, because you have to target a person, you choose an opponent and you say, cool, pick one of these, one goes to my hand. Well, now I put the crown on the head.
Right. And that's what the person that's targeted with intuition can do, right? They can choose to king make if they so choose. But that's when typically you would offer, and this is in tournaments, right? Like, obviously, and not everyone's playing in tournaments, and you can sit and talk about it afterwards, right? If you really wanted to. But in a tournament setting, that's where you typically would be like, okay, can we just call it a draw here? You know, and the person going for it right then and there might say, hey, I actually have a counterspell for that Fierce Guardianship, so even if you give it to him, I have another one.
We'll show it to me and we'll concede.
And then we can concede. But yeah, that's typically where you'd be like, hey, listen, if I let you have that Fierce Guardianship and the other two go to your yard, you win on your turn. If I say no, have the Lion's Eye Diamond, he just wins. Let's just call it a draw. That's what you would typically do in a tournament.
Yep.
So for those that eventually want to go to tournaments, that's something that you could actually offer up.
Sure.
So, which is just something good. So yeah, I think intuition is a great honorable mention.
Copy artifact. Actually, I got one of these in the mail. These are a little bit older, but copy artifact is 1 in a blue, and it says make a copy of any artifact on the battlefield. This is great. Cool. I've cast a spell. I can make it a 1 ring.
Right, which then would give you protection.
Some people are playing this kind of over 1 ring right now as like everyone else is playing 1 ring, and I'm just gonna
have one just in case.
If not, it makes another soul ring.
Mm-hmm.
It makes a basalt monolith. Cool. You have a basalt monolith over there, but your Kinnon's dead. My Kinnon's alive, but I don't have a basalt monolith. Cool.
Copy artifact.
Copy artifact. Make it a copy of yours. Great. It outside of like mana rocks, is there any like artifact besides maybe like Graph Digger's Cage or something like that to like solidify that no one can win the game to stop anyone? I can't really think of it. Like 1 ring, mana rocks, Stacks Piece.
Yeah, Stacks Piece is like Torpor Orbs maybe is something that would come down as a copy artifact. I'm trying to think. I think Null Rod is really strong right now.
Sure.
Just because people might go more into artifacts because Dockside's gone, and so it could come down as a copy of that, just so that way it makes it more difficult for them to win because they have to get rid of 2 Null Rods now.
Sure. So redundant Stacks Piece that locks someone out, your own piece to progress you, or the 1 ring, which seems a little bit less than what it used to be.
Yes, for sure.
But then again, a 2 mana.
A 2 mana 1 ring. That's not too shabby.
A 2 mana. A 2 mana Soul Ring isn't horrible either.
Interesting. How would this interact with a Phyrexian Metamorph?
You would copy what it is. So
because it's an artifact in addition to its other types. Interesting.
Correct. So it wouldn't. I don't think it would become a 0/0.
Right.
Because it's not that at that point in time. It is a artifact.
So you can get a second copy of something if you wanted it.
So if someone Phyrexian Metamorphs a creature that you really want, you could then copy artifact the Phyrexian Metamorph to make a copy of an artifact of that creature as well.
Interesting.
So yes, because it's not that anymore. So niche. I think it just really is a good piece to have to progress yourself.
Yep, that's gonna do it for blue. So blue, again, super surprised to see what people were doing in EDH, and I hope that this just shows that sometimes CEDH and EDH aren't all that different.
Not
Like
really.
we may care about cards in a different way than you guys do, but like we're all just EDH players.
Pretty
We're all just
much.
here to have a good time the same way, and like you guys clearly care about your counter spells just the same as we do, and it was an interesting dive to be sure. One thing that we didn't go over was actually the stats of blue. So blue sees play, I believe, slightly above the other colors. Like I said, we talked about red and it being like right where it needs to be in a 5-color spread at 20%, but blue is 21.47%. So just over that line a little bit from the top 20 decks on EDH Rec. But it's interesting. It was interesting to see this, and I hope that this shows people that, you know, maybe if you like your counter spells and you like doing some of this stuff that maybe you get people get upset with you in your pod about, that you can come play CEDH with us,
Yep.
you know,
Port on over.
and you know we'll accept your force of will with open arms. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. We appreciate you guys being here and watching the content. It's been fantastic, and I'm loving it every day. I enjoy doing this, and I'll continue to enjoy doing this. So we appreciate you guys.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you next week with the final color.